Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the contract drafting webinar with Lex Harbor Jurica in collaboration with Lobby with Lawyers. So I'm clearly audible, right? Okay. I expect a very interactive session. So let's just quickly move on to our session today. So my screen is visible. Is it visible? Yeah, great. Okay. So before contract, moving into the PPT portion, can someone please tell me what is a contract and like what is an agreement, differences, and so on? You can use the chat box as well. You can unmute yourself and tell. So, what is exactly a contract? What is an agreement? Is there any difference between a contract and agreement?
Ma'am, contract is enforceable by law when agreement is not enforceable by law.
Yes, great. So basically, a contract is something that is bound by law, which creates an obligation between the parties who have signed the particular agreement before the law. So agreement is nothing but like it's like just a draft may be signed but not enforceable in nature. So this depends on the nature of what you're entering into. What does the express language in the drafting talks about? So that's where the contract drafting or agreement drafting comes into picture. So what makes it very important is that a simple mistake in an agreement or a simple mistake in the drafting that you have made can make your client like get into legal disputes, problems, and everything. All right. So yeah. So let me just go to my PPT. We can also say all agreement. Yes, exactly. Yes, all agreements we are drafting, like they are contract, but not all contract is agreement. Is exactly. So let's move on to the PPT. So in this session, we'll be dealing with what is a contract, what is the basic structure of a contract. So here I'll be interchangeably using contract and agreement. So please don't get confused. So I'll be maybe using contract, maybe using agreement. So please don't get confused here. Then certain essential clauses. Then how do you form a contract? What will be the validity? Then some common pitfalls in drafting and some tips and tricks. So, what exactly is a contract? A contract is nothing but it is a legally binding agreement that is being made between two or more parties that establishes certain rights and obligations. Now, why drafting is important here? See, drafting clearly gives out the objective of the contract. Yes, what are the obligations of the party? And what are the rights of the party, what are the limitations of two parties, okay, on what constitute a breach. So if I talk from a client and another party perspective, let's say a person, my client approaches me to draft an agreement. So I have drafted it, but there are certain vague languages, vague clauses, like it's not like closed or it's not like proper, which tells that the either party may or may not terminate the agreement. So what is may or may not, and when termination can happen? So all these factors comes into when you are drafting a contract. So as a person who drafts an agreement or a contract, you need to be very much specific about the language you use, words you use, clauses that you are putting. It should not be vague or ambiguous in nature. Okay. So, what is like a valid contract? Of course, competency, there should be an offer, acceptance. So, these are all basics that we have learned in law school. All right. So consideration should be there. That is the amount. What are the obligations? If you perform this obligation, this much consideration you'll be getting, or you perform this obligation, I'll perform this. So there are different nature types of contracts as well. Okay. And there is also an intention. So here the word intention. So what makes a contract legally binding and legally, like, I mean, the agreement that legally binding and not binding is the intention here. If the intention is to establish a legal relationship, then it forms a contract. Now, suppose if the intention is just to enter into an understanding or to define certain terms without creating a legal relationship, it is just an agreement. All right. Now, why contract matters? First is to clarify your obligations, what you have to do, what you don't have to do. Basically, it set a kind of a boundary. Okay. It will protect interest. Then what else? Prevent dispute. Okay. This is the major part. Now, if you draft a vague and a ambiguous clause in a contract, what happens? It leads to further dispute. So your aim is to protect your client. Your aim is to minimize the dispute like window for your client. So your clauses should be such a way drafted that it should be perfect, minimize the dispute, and clearly define terms and conditions. So if these three things are clear, you will be able to draft a perfect agreement. Okay. And one more thing is that when you draft an agreement, your approach should be in such a way that it should protect your client. It should give adequate protection as to the interest of the client, what terms and condition the client is telling, and most importantly, the objective behind the certain agreement as to why this particular agreement is required. All right. Now, it gives the remedies if a breach happens. If one particular clause is being violated, what happens? Some remedy should be there. So that should be given in the contract. So I have seen many contracts that tells this will be your right, this will be my obligation. But contracts without cancellation termination clause, which do not give any remedy as to if you don't perform, what will happen? So that will take you to the court instead. So the contract itself should have a dispute resolution mechanism. It should have adequate clauses to address breaches, violations, and everything. Legal certainty. Like on what basis am I taking you to court? Why, as to why I'm taking you to court? Then timeline. Suppose without timeline, what happens? It's definitely a vague contract. I want to perform this particular obligation, but I don't set a time limit. What is the use of that particular obligations? Party can perform whenever he want. So that's why there are very much important clauses like your payment terms, cancellation termination, then comes your force major. Okay, let's dive into deep. What all are these? Now, yeah, so this is a basic structure of how your contract will be looking into. I'll deeply deal with the session. I'll just give a overview here. Basically, you will have a heading as to what type of contract it is. Then a preamble. Preamble is nothing but who all are the parties, what they are doing, whether they are working, is it a company, all those things. Recitals, yes. So, how many of them knows what exactly a recital is? What is a recital? Can someone please respond? Anyone? Okay. Okay, great. Uh, can you explain how we will consider okay, valid intention. Okay, so this is again an important thing that you have to keep mind in while drafting. That is, your drafting should be in such a way that establishes an intention. Now you're clearly defining the role. You're clearly setting out the terms and condition. You're clearly putting the cancellation termination thing. From it's very clear that you are entering into a like something with an intention. Now, to establish a legal relationship will be expressly given in the contract itself through the wordings, right? If this particular provision or this particular clause is being violated, then what happens? I will take you to court, or this is enforceable in the court of law. So I will be showing you sample contracts, which will be more helpful to understand that particular statement. Then, okay. So to be more precise of what exactly a recital is, see, a recital is nothing but the background or the context, that is basically the whereas clause. So this term is very important. Okay, I'll give you an example. Now, in the preamble portion, we have who is the party, what is the role. But when it comes to your recital, it tells this party is there, this party is there. Let's take an example of just two parties, party A and party B. Now, party A is there, party B is there. Recital tell you as to why party A and party B is coming together to form this agreement, or why, as to why the party A and party B is coming into an agreement as to what all roles and responsibilities. So this is the context, okay, as to why, or you can simply, to be very simple, just the objective as to why this agreement is being created. Then comes your operative clauses. Operative clauses are nothing but it is the major part of a contract which talks about the terms, conditions, obligations, like what one party have to do, one party what it doesn't have to do, and all those things. So moving on, um, you will have a, yeah, preamble. I have told you we will deal with it with examples, definition clause, all right. So we have a lot of clauses here. So let me just quickly take you to the some of the practical things. So here I have an event management agreement. So kindly ignore the highlight and annotations and everything here. So here we have a simple event management agreement. I will just tell you the background of this event management agreement. There is two parties. That is party A, party B. Party A is hosting an event and party B is an event management company. So they want to enter into an agreement to set out certain terms and obligations. So party A is conducting a gala or it's a auction, let's say an event. Let's simply keep it as an event. And party A want to appoint party B as the event manager, like to take over the event, supervise it, make arrangements, do everything. Okay. So my client is the host. That is the first party who is hosting an event, and the second party is an event manager. Now this client comes to me and tells me that the client wants an event management agreement with this particular event management company. So what is this agreement called? It's as simple as that. It's just an event management agreement. And so when you come, I will just give you the structure of this, and then we will move on to each and every clauses. The structure of will be firstly the title, that is the heading. Okay, next comes, this is a thing telling that when it is entered and who all are entering it. This portion is called the preamble. Okay, this is the recital, that is the background, like who is party A, who is party B, and the third sentence tell like as to why the party A and party B is coming together here. Okay, then appointment. So these are the operative clauses from 1 to 18 is the operative clauses through which the contract's terms and conditions are being set. All right. Now, so here you have an appointment where the first party will appoint the second party, telling that you will be the event manager. Then there will be scope of services. Scope of services, what will be the obligation of one party? What will be the obligation of the next party? You will have the payment terms, that is your consideration part. Yes, you will have expenses. So since this is an event management agreement, there'll be a lot of third parties involved. So this is basically a common sense thing. Okay, so when you're drafting a contract, before drafting, conduct a background study. Ask your client each and everything what the client requires. Okay, That is like what will be the terms and condition, what will be your payment, whom you are appointing, all the details you are getting, and what exactly you will require the other party to do. So which all you will set in the obligations part. Okay. Now, cancellation and termination, in what circumstances this particular contract will be cancelled or this particular contract will be terminated. Indemnification as such, if a loss happen because of a negligence actions or of one party, then who will compensate for the loss? So this comes in your indemnification part. Okay. Intellectual property is that the logos, trademarks are being protected. Confidentiality, assignment in the sense that, so all these are major clauses. So whatever clauses you are finding in the agreement, these all are standard clauses. Now how, on what basis it will differ? So let me quickly give you a second scenario. The same event, but the party wants to enter into a agreement with a venue provider, not an event manager. Now the event manager is done, so I have given the entire event responsibility to the event manager. Now I am giving the so now I wanted a venue where I can host a place. So what will happen? So I will go to a venue provider. I will tell that I will use this venue on this particular date and everything. So definitely I want an agreement with them to reduce the legal dispute if something happens. So what will I put there? So first party will be my client, second party will be the venue provider. Recitals, again recitals. Then instead of appointment, it is grant of venue. As to what purpose we are doing, then obligations of first party, obligations of second party. So this is some client requirement based customization. Then it will have cancellation, termination, it will have force major, it will have all these standard clauses. So if you go these kind of clauses like force major, indemnification, confidentiality, amendment, entire agreement, severability, all these are the essential or standard clauses of any kind of contract. You draft any kind of contract, these clauses should be there. It is non-negotiable. Okay. So now what are all these clauses? So let me just quickly show you some of the clauses and how it will be. Let's go to a force major clause. Okay. What is a force major? It means basically the act of the god. Now, suppose any particular violation in the contract happens due to any, unforeseen circumstances, because so now this is a venue. Okay. I need a venue to host the agreement. 2 days before the agreement, like 2 days before the event, what happens? There is heavy rainfall. Okay. And the property where I was planning to host my event was full underwater. It's like flooded. So now where will I host? Is it the wrong of my client? No. Is it a mistake from the venue host? No. Venue provider? No. So this clause will trigger. Okay, that is when some natural disaster or any unforeseeable event happens, force major clause will trigger. And this clause is like standard for every contract. Okay, yes. Now, let me take another essential thing. Okay, dispute resolution and governing law. So now this is an important clause to decide your legal intention. Suppose if any party A or party B, they violate any particular provision of this agreement, they do not perform any obligation, or they acted against any terms and conditions. Now, what will be the remedy? Okay. Okay, so many of them will go for ADR. So the contract itself will have an ADR mechanism. ADR is nothing but alternative dispute resolution, which tells that, see, if any clause is violated, you come into an arbitration or negotiations or any kind of mediation kind of thing, and you resolve the dispute. And now the dispute is not being resolved. Then where will you go? You go to the court. So which court will govern will also be given in the contract. Which court of law will have jurisdiction to govern this will have the particular clause in the agreement. Now, let me just show you one example there. Let's take. Okay. Governing law and jurisdiction. So this agreement shall be governed and construed in accordance with the laws of. So if both the parties are from India, you can just put India. Okay. Then subject to any mutually agreed dispute resolution mechanism, the courts at, again India will come, okay, shall have the exclusive jurisdiction over the dispute, which means that now after signing and everything of this agreement, if any dispute comes, which courts will have the jurisdiction? India. Now suppose a party from Britain, let's say UK, is signing, coming into an agreement with a party in India, then what happens? They can either decide which courts will have the jurisdiction, okay, or the place where the contract is being signed will have. Now, after, so in according to the Indian law, when an agreement is registered under the Registration Act in India, then it will have a legal enforceability. Okay. But that doesn't mean that every these agreement will not have. This agreement will have an evidentiary value in the Indian courts. But one, it is registered and notarized in nature, it is completely enforceable. Okay. So it depends on the jurisdiction and laws of the particular countries. All right. So, so far, how is it going? Are you guys able to follow? Yes. Great. So let's then quickly go to another kind of an agreement. So this is a memorandum of understanding. Okay. Now here I will tell you certain important things. See, here I have the heading and title, yes. Okay. Now you will be having a doubt. What is this MOU in the bracket in the bold letters? Why is the effective date in bold letters? This is called as defining. This is the technique called as defining. So this is called as defining in the sense that whenever I want to use the term memorandum of understanding, referring to this memorandum of understanding, I don't have to repeat the word memorandum of understanding throughout my agreement. What I can just simply use is MOU. Same thing, effective date means this date of 15th day of July 2025 is the effective date. Now, whenever I want to refer to this date, I can just simply use the effective date. This technique is called as defining. Okay, so this is called as defining. All right. Now, again, defining will come in case of the party. So now this is my first party. Titan Global Retail is the first party, and Agenda Jewelers is the second party. Now, I don't want to use Titan Global and Agenda Jewelers throughout my agreement wherever first party and second party is referred. So I will again define it as assigner and assignee. So whenever I want to refer to Titan Global Limited, this complete thing, that is the first party, I just have to use assigner. Okay, as I've used here and here. Now, suppose I want to use the second party, I can use the term. I have defined it in bold letters in bracket assignee. So whenever an assignee, you find it in any part of the agreement, which means Agenda Jewelers. Whenever you find assigner, which means that Titan Global Retail LLC. Okay, so in the same way you define, suppose there is a property. Okay, so this is an MOU for the purpose of relating to the property, some tenancy. Okay, tenancy kind of an agreement. So they are not entering into a tenant agreement, they just want a memorandum of understanding, just to tell what is the terms and conditions and everything, that's it. So what, there will be a property located. No, I don't want to do this entire thing, I don't want to repeat it throughout my agreement. So I will refer it to as property and use just property. So whenever I use the term the property. So when I use the property, what does that mean? It refers to this entire address of the property. All right. Okay, so now let me just go to a simple drafting technique. Okay, let's just tell, okay, recite. Let's just take a simple thing of the recital part only. So here recitals is the whereas thing, that is the background. So here it is a memorandum of understanding with respect to a property. So here the assigner, so who is the assigner? Already defined, Titan Global Limited, represents and warrants to the assignee. Assignee, who is that? Ajanta Jewelers. Yes, that they are the lawful tenant of the premises of some property, which also have been defined here. Assigner is desirous of transferring their tenancy right of the property to the assignee. So the assigner is a tenant. Okay, he want to just transfer this tenancy right with respect to this property, okay, to the assignee. So for that they are coming into a MOU, and this MOU is what it is to define their terms and condition. Now let's see another agreement. Let's say the event management agreement itself. Okay, let's just take this. So this is an event management. So what will be the recital of that? So first party, what does the first party want to do? They wanted an event, which I'm defining it as an event. It is happening in certain date, venue, and everything. And who is the second party? Second party has a business of event planning, coordination, and everything. And why this thing is being done? Because the first party wanted to appoint the second party to manage and execute. So here I'm defining the responsibility. Okay, the event on terms and conditions set forth. So this is the background as to what does the first party do, second party do, and why this contract is. Your recital is done. Now let me show you a technique of drafting with respect to, let me just take a simple clause. Okay, let me just take a amendment clause. Amendment clause that if you want uh, like any changes, okay, in the particular agreement, is it possible? Yes. How is it possible? It is possible through your amendment. Now suppose either of the party wants to change any particular thing, whether they can do it, yes, they can do it. But how they can do it, it is defined in the amendment clause. Now, here I will show you certain differences between a vague and ambiguous clause and a perfectly drafted clause. So, here it is in the amendment clause, it is being told that, okay, so this is your amendment clause. It is being told that no modification, variation. So I have added modification, variation, amendment. So in the scope, I'm adding all these three. To this agreement shall be valid or binding unless the same is made in writing. So here I'm setting an obligation that it should be in writing and duly signed by authorized representative of both the parties. Okay, any waiver or consent relating to any provision of this agreement shall be effective only if it is in writing and shall not be deemed as a waiver. So let's just keep it very simple, telling that. Now, suppose I have put the thing that, now suppose the word writing is not there. Okay, this much is not there. Mm, okay, let's just take another example telling that. Um, Now, suppose this term writing is not there. Okay, let's tell that no modification, variation, or amendment to this agreement shall be binding unless duly signed by the both parties. So, what are the parties supposed to sign? Okay, so that gives a gap there. Now, suppose the amendment clause tells that there can be amendment in the agreement. Okay, there is a simple sentence telling that there can be amendment. Agreement by either of the parties. Okay, so this is the clause that I have put in the amendment portion. Okay, so this is my amendment clause. Okay, so this is something that has been drafted. So this entire thing is what? Vague. Why is it vague? It does not clarify what amendments, it does not clarify how amendments can be made, it does not clarify, it can lead to further dispute. See, if any party can want to make, they just change the writings of the contract. without even telling the other parties, without even obtaining the other party's consent. Suppose the payment of this particular agreement is 5,000 rupees and one party is coming and changing it's 2,000 rupees. Whether the other party get to know? No. So this entire thing is a vague clause. Now, how can you make it a strong and not like a perfect clause? By clarifying the technicalities. There can be amendment in the agreement by either of the parties provided, okay, provided a written notice. Okay, so I'm giving the party the notice that I'm going to amend so the other party knows. Okay, and consent agreed in writing. So all these words are important. So there should be a written notice that I'm going to make an amendment. There should be consent of the parties, which should be agreed in writing for the purpose of reference by both the parties. Okay. So now, does this make sense? Will it reduce the dispute? Yes. So that is why drafting is a very important and essential element. All right. Yes. Now let me take a something like something similar. Let's go to a venue agreement and take something similar. Okay, let's just take the portion of force major itself. So it tells that, so you know it's an unforeseeable situation. You need to add the clause. But do you know that how to draft it without any like leaving any scope of dispute? Okay, let me just clarify that for you. That is neither party, which means that for both the parties it is applicable, shall be liable for failure or delay in performance of its obligation. So this is only with respect to the obligations under this agreement. So agreement also clarified. So I have already defined this agreement, that is the venue agreement here, as the agreement. So I don't have to repeat the same wording. I can just put the word agreement. Okay. Then if a failure or delay is caused by beyond its reasonable control. Now, this sentence is very important. And the word reasonable, what is control? So any party can come and tell that, okay, this was beyond my control. But why the word reasonable is important here? Which means that it reduces the scope of dispute, which means that reasonable in the sense that, okay, it's a valid, okay, it is understandable in situations like act of God, fire, flood, or everything, and similar event. Similar event, how it should be interpreted? Something that is beyond reasonable control. So I am defining this entire thing as a force major event. So whenever I want to refer to this similar event or this fire, flood, or anything, I just have to use the word force major event for this entire thing. Now, suppose that happens, what will happen? The affected party, everything, okay, notify the other party, okay, notify. So now this happened, okay, so there is a clause in the agreement that if this happened, it's okay, you don't have to follow that obligation. But how will the other party gets to know that this particular force major event has happened? Okay, so that is why this is event. This is important. Notify the other party, that too in writing. Why? It's a proof of occurrence, and take a reasonable step to mitigate that. Now something has happened. Is it possible for you to like reduce its effect? If yes, you have to take so. Okay, so such is the drafting language. So provision related to amendment, in the sense, there is no provision. See, a provision in the sense, are you asking any legal sections, legal articles like that, legal provisions? Heading in the recital is just a recital itself. Okay. So I didn't get your question actually. Specific provision, are you referring to any legislation, something like that? Or a specific draft? Okay. So yeah. So I'll just give you a 2 to 3 like common things that comes in drafting, and then let's move on to the Q&A portion also. So see, a contract drafting does not have a hard and fast rule that you have to stick to this format only, or you have to use these words only. Your purpose is to protect the interest of the client through clear and unambiguous wordings in by the essential things, essential components, standard clauses, and everything. A contract can be made by a person sitting in UK, a person sitting in Singapore also together. So there is no any international boundaries. In the sense that you prefer a dispute resolution mechanism in the contract itself. Uh, Yes. Now, suppose it is not resolved by arbitration, you will have to add the clause of which jurisdiction. Now, when you are giving an ADR clause, you have to fix that where will the arbitration take place also. Okay. I'll be sharing that PPT. I'm actually not supposed to share the agreement portions. I'll be sharing a PPT. So now in this webinar, like you will guys came about different clauses, how where it should be put, and like what is its importance. You know, like each and every, even if it's a simple amendment clause itself, it is a very, very important clause. So everything, every word in a contract is very, very important. So in Lex Habajurica, we have drafted a very comprehensive course which teach you the essential basic drafts, like you know MOUs, will be dealing with different service agreement and all those signs. We have like come up with a clause, like a clause specific course which gives you a more in-depth analysis of what words you should use, what are the standard clauses that you are supposed to do, and everything. So which we will be dealing in the course. So if you have any doubts with related to this, whatever I have discussed in this session, like yeah, there is a list of clauses that are very necessary. Yes, there is almost like the 15 like there's almost like 12 clauses that are necessary, and rest comes to the customization, like as to your client requirements. So in contract drafting, one thing you have to keep in mind is that everything is about the client, what the client requires. You put it in the wordings and give, but you put it in such a wording that protect his interest by reducing the scope of dispute. So I have seen many contract which is like so vague and ambiguous. It's not clearly defined what client needs, what is the obligations, and everything. So to avoid that, join the course. We'll be dealing with this very extensively, and I'm sure that by the end of the course, you guys will be able to like master in contract drafting. It depends on whether a person wants an MOU to be enforceable, it should be registered. If not, not registered. Negotiation, mediation, and arbitration in commercial dispute. Okay. So negotiation is so in India we have an Arbitration and Conciliation Act that talks about different arbitration agreement and everything. It's not negotiation, is a where two parties will sit together and negotiate, this is the terms and everything. Okay, that takes place between two parties. Mediation in the sense that there'll be a neutral third party which will be trying to have conversation and telling that you compromise this, you compromise this, and everything. But when it comes to arbitration, both the parties will fix an arbitrator or a seat of arbitration, and they will submit to the authority. So arbitral awards are like binding in nature. So the decision or the outcome of arbitration is binding in nature. Any questions? Any other questions? Any doubts? Okay, more examples of MOU. Let's say, okay, there are two colleges. Okay, MOU is nothing but it's not like you know, like to press on certain terms and conditions. MOU is just that if you and me are coming into an understanding, okay, or okay, so I'll tell you some 3 4 context why an MOU can be drafted. Like first context will be if you and me want to do some particular business before signing partnership and before starting the business as such, we both come into an agreement telling that in the partnership this will be your terms and conditions, this will be my terms and conditions, just an understanding that you're coming together. Now in a different scenario, MOU can be between two colleges telling that in certain May to June, some students will come to your college, some students will come to my college, like an exchange program. So MOU will be nothing but just to give the terms and conditions. This will be the arrangement. Now, suppose I will give you one more scenario telling that now I and you, like suppose party and party B wanted to start a joint venture, that together they want to start a joint business. So before starting the joint business, before starting the right drafting the joint business agreement, they want to come into some certain conclusions that this will be your terms, this will be my terms, and everything. So for that, you do an MOU. Okay. Need of MOUs just to define the terms and conditions. It's just an understanding that okay, this party will be doing this party will be doing that. Now, if you want to make the MOU binding, there should be a separate clause as to the wordings in the MOU itself telling that this will be enforceable or this creates a binding nature. Usually MOUs are not of binding, but if you want the MOU to be binding, then you have to clearly specify in the MOU itself. Okay, NDA is nothing but you'll be getting the PPT. Yes, NDA will be the non-disclosure agreement, which means that now it is more like for large scale businesses. Now, suppose let me just simply take the example of this event management company itself. Now, I am hosting an event. I am giving the event manager full responsibility to conduct the event. Now, there are certain confidential information as to who is the sponsors of the event, what will be the budget, everything, okay, which I don't want any third party to know. So I will be signing a non-disclosure agreement with the event manager, where in that agreement containing that these all are my confidential information and you shall not disclose it. If you disclose it, it shall be a breach and I will take you to court. That it's as simple as that. Mm, yes, yes, exactly. It is just an understanding. So, but if you add the word binding in the sense, then only it will be what? It will be a binding nature. All right. So it should, if your MOU wanted to be a particularly binding and enforceable, definitely you have to add that this MOU will be binding in the nature. Okay. Otherwise, an MOU does not have any value. It is just a written proof that these are the terms and conditions. Okay. Boilerplate clauses are the standard. Yes, yes, they are very important, like governing law jurisdiction. The entire, as I told you, there are some fixed clauses that you cannot like change. That are your boilerplate clauses, like your amendment, like your governing law, like your dispute mechanism, without which the contract itself does not exist. Okay, it is just an ambiguous contract. Your severability, your force majeure, everything is your boilerplate clauses. Yeah, this should be there. Suppose a force, what if a flood comes in the venue that I'm hosting the event? Who is responsible? Okay, so that's why force majeure is required. Severability in the sense that suppose I add a clause of confidentiality in my agreement. The agreement, okay, I'm talking about survival clause, sorry, not severability. Survival clause, I'll tell you, then I'll go to severability. Survival in the sense that now the agreement got over, but still there are my confidential information and my intellectual property as to logos and brand. So just because the contract ends, will I be giving a right for the other party to use that? No. So survival means that even after the contract ends, the certain clauses will be binding in nature. Now, severability in the sense that I have entered into an agreement telling that I will be supplying a particular herbal product in India. okay, with a UK company. So a UK company is and an Indian company enter into a particular agreement. The agreement is signed, everything binding in nature, everything herbal product. Now, on some after 2 months of the supply, Indian government bans that herbal product. Okay, so or Indian government bans one of the herbal products. Let's say like there are some five herbal products the UK companies wanted to distribution, and the distribution happens through my company, and one of the herbal product is being banned by the Indian government, it become illegal. So does that mean that the entire agreement become illegal? No. There comes your clause called severability. Okay, there you sever, like you take away the particular portion that has become illegal, or the particular portion that will become like not enforce, like not performable in nature. So you sever it from that, you take it away, the rest of the contract is valid. Okay, so that is why severability. So it's a convenience to the parties. If any provision becomes like you cannot perform it, or any provision become illegal, or any provision become like you cannot in a circumstance that it cannot be performed, then whether the entire agreement should be invalidated? No. Okay, yes. If the MOU has a specific wording that this particular is binding in nature, it is enforceable in nature. Yeah, so you had an intellectual property and confidential information that comes in two particular things. So in intellectual property comes into picture according to your client requirements. If the client is giving some license or some interested with something like like some brands and logos, for example this herbal distribution example itself take, if I am the distributing company, after I am using their intellectual property and everything for distribution, their name and everything, after the contract expires, will I still be able to use that? No. Can I use this intellectual their name for supplying any other product which is not in their name? So there your intellectual property comes in picture. Yes, I'll be sending the PPT. Economic hardship, yes, economic hardship is comes into picture. It depends on the context actually. Let's say, for what example can I give you? Yeah, it's if it is an unforceable nature and if it is beyond the reasonable control. So that is where your reasonable control phrase will trigger. Then economic hardship is qualify as a force major event. Yes. Yeah, in certain cases non-disclosure agreement, why it is made separate in the sense that there is a lot of confidential information. The entire crust of the agreement is the confidentiality of that. Let me just tell you, okay, this event management itself, there'll be a lot of sponsors, there'll be a lot of celebrities who is coming to that, so there'll be a lot of confidential information. Now there is an event manager, there'll be third parties as well, as to people who comes for decoration, lighting, sound system, catering, food, menu, everything. There'll be a lot of third parties, so these information will be circulated among these third parties as well. So in that context, if you sign an NDA, which means that all the parties, okay, all the parties, the event manager, it makes it bound that this particular information will not go out, or even after the contract expires, that this information stands confidential in nature. This particular information, if it is stored in any particular computer device, will be destroyed after the contract. So all these things will come in your NDA. Okay, there are certain things that are compulsory in nature, but there are certain things that depends to case. For example, catering, if I add a cent of catering, it is only applicable if the client requires catering, right? But your amendment, survival, force majeure, severability, then your confidentiality, all this thing will be like it will be your standard clauses. Okay, any further doubts? I'll be sending the PPT. The course details we'll be providing in the group later. Yes. So this course will cover all these standard clauses. It will cover how exactly it should be drafted and its applicability in contracts. Then we'll be covering some sample contracts and agreements, how it should be drafted. We'll be also dealing with the customization depending on which contract what and what contract is what. Yes. Okay. So if there are no further doubts, like we'll wind up this webinar. Hope you all liked it and it was an insightful for you. Hope it was very insightful. If you're interested in more practical aspect, do join the course. Already we have successfully conducted so many batches and we have so many people who are engaged in freelancing and everything through this course. It was very helpful for them. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. It's been a wonderful session for me as well. Your doubts were like very nice doubts you guys have asked. So, hope to see you all in the course to learn more about the contract drafting. So, thank you. You can leave the session. It will be circulated in the group.